Bye on everyone. There we go. So, hi. As she said, thank you for that introduction. My name is Rachel Bloom. Um, you, of course, might know me as the Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. If we were in a live setting, this is where I'd pause for a full 30 minutes for you to wildly applaud. I'll just pause now. Okay, thanks. So having made a show about a woman who leaves her prestigious law job in New York to pursue her old summer camp fling in West Covina, California, and also have that show touch on themes of romantic obsession, mental illness, and sexual identity, while also featuring numbers called things like Period Sex and The First Penis I Saw, I don't think I need to explicitly say that I'm kind of a weirdo. Kind of a weird person. And I say that with pride now, but I didn't always, I wasn't always that way. I was always a weirdo, of course. But for so long, I didn't want to be. I wanted to be, as Ariel would sing, if she were also weird, I want to be where the normal people are. Thank you. It's where you would also applaud. So hence the title of this book that I wrote. Oh, I love that I can see the chats. This is such a fun, I'm so starved for live performance that I can actually see the chats as I'm speaking. This is really exciting. Oh, this is gonna take up a lot of time because I'm just gonna respond. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for engaging in the chat. Rachel, my 5-year-old is a huge fan of yours. Oh, thank you. This is great. Okay, I'll continue. But I love that I could actually kind of have an audience right now. This is so exciting. So my book is about my relationship to normalcy. And it's a kind of loose linear exploration of my relationship with what is being normal, starting with my childhood, going into my teen years, and then ending in, okay, well, what do you do when you're someone who thinks you don't fit in, and then you're making a TV show about that? And you're embracing that part of yourself while at the same time also doing things that are the pinnacle of not normal, but aspirationally normal, like a red carpet, trying to look perfect on a red carpet or looking perfect for an interview. So back to the beginning of the book. I grew up in a place called Manhattan Beach, California. So I am SoCal born and raised. And I felt incredibly out of place growing up there. While other kids were thinking about surfing, I was thinking about death. While they were reading Little Women, I was reading The Exorcist. Most kids played soccer on the weekends. I played Sondheim. And I just completely didn't fit in. I'm sure so many of you know the style of these California beach towns where everyone's like, yeah, cool, like super like laid back, whatever. And we were just actually renting, an Airbnb in Malibu because our house was under construction. And they said we had 2 parking spaces. And I get there and the landlord was, of course, a beach woman. And she's like, and you should like just park on the street. And it was along the PCH. So it's dangerous to park along the PCH in Malibu. And I was like, oh, I thought we had 2 parking spaces. And she's like, oh, I mean, technically like you don't, but like you can use it sometimes, but like just be cool, you know? And it's like, no, I need specificity of directions and language. And that was my experience growing up. It's just, everyone's like, be cool. And it's like, but we're all gonna die, you know? But things, I wanted to be like everyone else. I wanted to be cool and tanned, despite the fact skin cancer runs in my family. And I desperately wanted to be like everyone else, but I was such a dork. I didn't know how. And every time I would try to be cooler, it would alienate me even more. Like our school had a lip sync contest where a lot of the cool kids would do like cool lip syncs to cool songs. And so I did Adelaide's Lament from Guys and Dolls, being like, I'm going to show everyone my talent. That'll make everyone respect me. What? And I didn't understand when I watched the normal people. I didn't understand how they knew how to do it. it just seemed like they all went to some sort of school or read some sort of handbook. Like, was there some sort of Sunday school that everyone was going to that I didn't know about, like Hebrew school, but actually useful? And writing a book about this theme, actually, being a first-time author, felt very appropriate because middle school was the worst time of my life, and I write about it a lot in the book. But the one place I did feel okay was this creative writing club. Every Wednesday, there was an after-school creative writing club, and there was this woman named Ms. Porter who wore glasses and had frizzy hair and always wore this like wool hemp poncho, and like looking back on it, definitely smoked weed. And I didn't know it at the time, but I knew it at the time. And she was the first person to ever ask me to call her Ms. And I was obsessed with her. We would do 15 minutes of just free writing. Write down however you feel in this moment. She treated us like adults. And this club, of course, attracted the weirdos. You don't really need to go to a creative writing club if you're popular. You need a reason to go to creative writing club. And before I tell you more about the book, I think a lot can be summed up in the following excerpt from a poem that I wrote in this creative writing club when I was 12, appropriately called Normal. What is normal? Every day we hear it as something we should be. But should we really? What is the so-called standard that we mold and fit ourselves through an invisible corset to be accepted in society all our lives? I promise this is a poem, but it is in essence just a paragraph that's just like shaped like a poem. Who is normal? Your neighbors? Your dog? Your Freddie Prinze Jr. lookalike crush in 1999? That was very topical. What appears to be normal may in fact be the opposite. A juicy ripe apple with a green worm inside. My theory is that every apple, whether rotten or ripe on the outside, has a tiny little green worm inside that's just dying to crawl out. And one day, it will. Yes, do I in fact repeat the imagery of a green worm being inside a juicy ripe apple within 2 lines? I do. So I never heard back from the Pulitzer Prize Committee when I submitted this poem. But as you can see, I was thinking about this idea of the status quo and normalcy from a very young age. And in some ways, this book is very much the culmination of a 33 years long self-funded study on normalcy and whether or not it actually exists. And I won't tell you the conclusion I came to, but spoiler alert, of course, there's no such thing as normal. If you think there's such thing as normal, you are basic and delusional. So this book is a collection of essays and other things centered around my personal experiences with normalcy. And I say other things because, yes, there are essays. And again, it is roughly on a kind of linear timeline, starts in childhood, ends in the current day. But those other things are kind of extrapolations on the theme. So for instance, in the section called Normal People Have Normal Childhoods, I include some erotic poetry that I wrote in the 5th grade. It's steamy. In the section in which I talk about what it's like to be a normal public figure, I talk about my adult obsession with amusement parks and how my personal celebrity cause would be to get $1 billion and build my own amusement parks, and included is my own ideal amusement park map. When I discussed the night I won a Golden Globe, not wanting to fall into the trap of thinking that, oh, look at me, I'm so cool and normal now, I described that night from the point of view of my dog, who doesn't know what a Golden Globe is and didn't give a shit. Because when you go from being someone who regularly found notes that said loser in her locker to being on a fancy award show red carpet, but yet you feel like the same person you always were, you have to wonder what the truth is. Okay, was the truth the locker note, or is the truth the red carpet? Was I always cool and I was just at the whim of other people, or did something inside me fundamentally change? So I could say that this book is for weirdos, but what I've learned is that nobody thinks they're normal. In the book, I talk about conversations that I've had with former bullies. One of them is from middle school. The other one is actually from my first television writing staff. And they anytime I talked to them, they didn't feel like they were popular, and they didn't feel like they were bullies. I mean, they knew they were bullies, but inside they were just as scared and insecure as I was. Um, and I've realized everyone has this narrative of I'm striving to be normal. That the only people who actually think that they fit in and are high status are sociopaths. Everyone, and I've been to these fancy events, like award shows and stuff, where I meet famous people, and when I talk to most of them, they're like, "Oh yeah, no, my Spanx are uncomfortable. I just want to get home to my cats." Like they don't feel like they fit in. And then, so I wrote this book last year. I wrote it when I was pregnant. And so it was very much always going to be a kind of summary of part one of my life, because I knew that my life was about to change with having a baby. What I, of course, didn't know is that a global pandemic was about to come, that literally in conjunction with having a baby, my baby was born in March. She is the age of the pandemic. Um, everyone's life was about to change, and everything about the world was about to change. And so in thinking about normalcy, nothing is normal right now. And nothing about this world will be normal when this book comes out on November 17th. And this idea of things not being normal has affected me on a very personal level. When I gave birth, my daughter was in the NICU, and so we were dealing with having a baby in the NICU during COVID, and one of my songwriting partners, Adam Schlesinger, died. And shortly after all that happened, I had a newborn at my teat, and I had to edit this book. And so suddenly I'm writing a book about feeling out of place, as I feel more out of place than I ever have in my life. It makes middle school look easy. So the bottom line is you can use this book as a way to relate to my experiences, but with the state of the world, you can also use it as an escape. And I hope that when you read it, you don't feel alone. By bearing my innermost fears and vulnerabilities, I hope that you can see yourself in me without you having to bear those fears and vulnerabilities. I am the sacrificial lamb, as it were, for you. And maybe you'll look at my stories and think, okay, I'm not so weird after all. Or you'll be like, what a loser, and laugh at me. And you'll want to put a note in my locker, but the joke's on you because I'm an adult. I don't have a locker. So that's a general summary. I could go through the book more, but I feel like we have some fun questions. Oh, our store's in Redondo Beach. That's so cool. Does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask me? I can tell you more about the book, or I can field some questions. No pressure. I'll wait for 20 seconds. Oh, yes. You're welcome for the J.K. Rowling footnote. So in the book, I have a piece of Harry Potter fan fiction that I've been wanting to write for years, which is Harry Potter encountering the Hogwarts Drama Club, because I always wondered at Hogwarts, is there a drama club? And I'm a big Harry Potter fan. And of course, during 2020, being an awful year, J.K. Rowling also decides to be like, hello, I'm transphobic. Whoop! That's a magic wand. And so I do include a footnote acknowledging that, because I don't want to negate the Harry Potter fandom and my love of Harry Potter, but also she's being really shitty. So that's in the book. Before I continue, Katerina, anything else, anything you want to add or say? Otherwise, I can start my own Q&A as well. Oh, here we go. Can you talk about the great cover art? So that was, that concept was dreamed up by me and my editor, Suzanne O'Neill. And I'm an awful person for not knowing the artist offhand right now. I'm a truly terrible person. If someone could look that up and drop that into the chat so I can say her name out loud. I follow her on Instagram. But basically I took a picture of myself. I was 8 months pregnant, so the artist also was able to imagine what I looked like without a pregnant belly. based it off of some photos that I took. And my dog is, of course, in the cover art. And that wasn't planned. She just climbed up on the bench with me when I was taking it and ended up being kind of the mascot of the book. And what's brilliant about the art is you'll notice I'm wearing cover art is by Sarah Deck. Thank you so much, Jimmy. So the cover art is brilliant because I'm wearing a shirt, if you look at it, that it looks like it's Betty Boop. And that is based on an actual shirt that I have that I talk about in the book, in which it's Betty Boop dressed as the Spice Girls with the caption Boop World. Yeah, and if you look very close at that t-shirt, you can see that that is a representative of the Boop World shirt. So Sarah Googled Boop World, saw that this shirt still exists, which you can do, and then based it on that. So that was just a brilliant, brilliant move by her. But yeah, the template was the idea of doing a kind of 70s, 80s Judy Blume, Sweet Valley High, going into a little early 90s Babysitters Club feel. And I love it. It's so well done. Sarah Deck. Have you ever written something for Crazy Ex and thought, there's no way this is getting on air? All the time. Actually, in the book, I talk a lot in earlier chapters about still being very much in touch with my inner child. Like, I remember childhood very well. And one of the things I remember about childhood is I watched a lot of network TV with my parents. I watched Seinfeld, Frasier, The Nanny, Everybody Loves Raymond. And so because I was raised on network TV, when I actually started making a network TV show and dealt with standards and practices, what I realized, CW is a broadcast network along with ABC, NBC, CBS, and Fox. And when you're on a broadcast network, you have to adhere to certain guidelines by the FCC, which among many things prohibits, I want to say, sexually explicit and or graphic material. But we were originally a pilot for Showtime. And the spirit of the show was always going to be kind of like boundary crossing. And we had to find a way to fit it into the FCC guidelines. And so what I realized is, because I was raised on network TV, we could do dirty jokes. They just had to be basically jokes that would go over the head of a child. Because I have many memories of watching TV shows with my parents, a character saying a line, and my parents going, oh, and me saying I didn't get it. And they're like, never mind, never mind. So using that memory, I kind of became the standards and practices whisperer. And I was able to get things past standards and practices. And so some of the things I talk about in the book are, so there's a number called We Tap That Ass All Over This House, which is a tap number, obviously. And it's sung by my character, Rebecca's ex-boyfriends. And they're doing a big tap number. And at one point there's a line, where should we, now it's time for the big finish. But where should we finish? On her chest. But they'd been dancing on furniture. And so it was like on a chest of drawers. And S&P was like, there is no way you can say this. And I was like, wait a second though. I'm using innuendo. If I were a child watching this, I'd think on her chest, it's a chest of drawers. And they were like, okay, could we have Rebecca say, please not on my chest, you'll scratch it? And I was like, sure. And that's how it got it. So the argument of, as long as a child specifically wasn't traumatized, that's how we got away with stuff. Now, how did we get away with the lyric, tell me about your sins and shock me with their luridness, let me be your pupil, let me choke on your cocksuredness? The original line was, I say you're so mean, but dude, I'm so wet. And I was gonna dump a bucket of water on my head. And standards of practices went, what are you doing? You can't just say I'm so wet. And I was like, but I'm gonna literally be wet. And they went, that's clearly not gonna be part of the song. You're just gonna dump a bucket of water on your head. You can't say I'm so wet, but they let us say, let me choke on your cocksuredness. I don't know. I personally would love to know how you got involved in the Nanny musical. So I got an email from my managers saying they're making a Broadway musical of The Nanny. You're their first choice. I'm a huge fan of The Nanny. It's a staple of my childhood. And without thinking about it, I was like, yeah, I'm down. And then I met with Fran Drescher and her writing partner, Peter Jacobson, with whom she co-created The Nanny. And if you don't know this, Fran Drescher created The Nanny with Peter Jacobson, who was her high school sweetheart. And that's why their production company is called High School Sweethearts. And then they got divorced, and he's like, you know what? I'm gay, and I've been gay this whole time, which inspired her TV land show, Happily Divorced. So I had a few writing sessions with them where I kind of felt like their daughter, because they're like, even though they're divorced, they're still soulmates. Yeah, it's been a really cool, cool experience so far. How did you arrive at West Covina for the setting of the show? Yeah, so because I grew up, so even though I grew up like along the beach, I spent a lot of time in more inland California, because unless you're walking along within that half-mile stretch near the beach, you're in like sun-baked inland California. And my grandparents lived in Torrance, and I spent a lot of time with them. And my mother didn't drive. My mother, we took cabs everywhere, like New Yorkers. We also walked a lot. So I spent a lot of time like walking along stretches in Southern California. And so my association with SoCal is not like cool beachy stuff as much as like being sun drenched and walking past strip malls. And so I always wanted to show my California, and then also my California being how, and I only realized going to the East Coast, how like quote unquote diverse it was. It really is this melting pot to the point where no one even like thinks about it. In my high school homecoming court, the year that I was on homecoming court, so it's a happy ending. But that year, our homecoming king was Chinese and our homecoming queen was Japanese. But I don't remember any like backpatting. That's just what it was. And I just never saw a lot of those elements of California portrayed, because a lot of the people who are making film and TV are rich people who live by the beach in mostly all white communities. And then so that's what we're going to see portrayed. So when Aline Brush McKenna and I were thinking about where to set the show, we knew we wanted it to be a big fish in a small pond, but we were like, I've seen the like New Yorker coming to like a small town in the nebulous Midwest. And she or I had never lived in the Midwest, barely been to the Midwest. So we wanted to make it something new and specific. And I mentioned to her, we knew we wanted to set it somewhere in California. I was mentioning growing up here. And I had a high school crush who lived in this place, Glendora, which is next to West Covina, California. But when he'd call me, it would come up as Covina, California. And I think for emphasis, to make the story sound funnier, I went, well, I had this guy who lived in West Covina, and I would always try to find excuses to go to West Covina to see him, which I did. And Aline was like, the show's set in West Covina. That's amazing. And that's how it happened. And then we went to West Covina. We walked through the mall. We did a couple other trips there, and we just brainstormed. And that's how we landed on home base. So if you haven't seen Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, you are probably very lost right now, but hopefully if you have. So the character Greg, and then later the character Heather, they work at this place called Home Base, which is a bar in some sort of little league field. And you watch that and you're like, what is this place? But this is based on a real place in West Covina called Big League Dreams. And it's actually a chain, I believe, in California. And it's this series of, it's just a huge family recreation center. So there are 4 mini baseball fields. There's like a mini Wrigley field. There's a mini Dodger Stadium. But it's huge because there's 4 of these. And then there's also tennis courts and an indoor basketball, literally forgot the term for where people play basketball. Stadium? What? Why am I thinking hoop? What? My brain is broken. Stadium? Yeah, basketball stadium. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. And so we were in this bar where, and it was, so it's a place where mostly children play sports on the weekends, but sometimes there are adult softball leagues there. but it's mostly children playing sports. And then there's a bar in the center. There are actually two of them. That's how big this place is. And the bar is fully stocked. It's not just beer, it's not just wine. We are talking hard liquor bar at this children's sports facility. And we're drinking at the bar and we're like, this is where Greg works. Because this is so bizarre and uniquely Californian, because it relies on the fact that you can be outdoors all year long. And that's why you can have this recreation center that's so huge, that's always going to be making money, that's so indoor outdoors, is because we're in California. And so it just felt interesting and new. Let's see. When you were growing up, did you want to be a writer or an entertainer? I wanted to be an entertainer. Writing came a little later. I always loved writing, but I didn't connect it to something I could do in conjunction with entertaining until really college. I was a musical theater major in college, and I kind of didn't fit in even in my musical theater program, which I also discuss in the book, in the form of a musical, incidentally. And I had done improv in high school, and I saw that there were auditions for this sketch comedy group happening, and I was like, that sounds just a great place where I might find people who are more like me. And I'd never done sketch comedy before, but I got on this group and I instantly fell in love with doing it. I just fell head over heels in love with writing sketch comedy. And it was this group where we would write and perform a new sketch show every month. And it was the first time that I'd combined writing and performing in that way. And that's why I fell in love with doing my own comedy. What would you tell your middle school self you would that you think would actually be helpful and not sound like platitudes? Good question. So something that never helped me was my parents or teachers saying the kids make fun of you because they're jealous. What? Jealous of what? What are they jealous of? Look at me. But the thing that actually does make sense, that I think would have helped, and that is true, is that they're in pain. I know you think they're happy and that their lives are carefree, but they're in pain. And they're just lashing out at you because they're different, because you're different. Although they're different too. They're just lashing out at you because you're different, and they want to assert themselves on the social ladder of middle school. And you are easy. You are someone who's definitely below them. And anyone who's definitely below them because they're in pain and insecure, they are going to stomp you down further. That's what I would say. Love your blue piano. How often do you play it? Fun fact about this piano. I'll tell you as I play it. That's right, I'll just play some simple chords. Because I can't really play a song while talking, although I can play like melodies. I'll play the theme from DuckTales. So this piano was not always blue. My husband is very impressed that I can do this, by the way, that I can play melodies by ear. Even though anyone who plays piano knows this is super easy, but he's so impressed that I can do this. And then if I add in my left hand, it gets a little more fucked. Nope, we're done. I was like, I'm not gonna embarrass myself in front of a bunch of people. My piano is fine. My piano skills are fine. I've been playing since I was 5. My teacher wasn't that great. My piano skills should be better. I compose on piano, but when I say compose, it is simple melodies, simple chords, which is why I'm primarily a lyricist. I have a co-composer. To answer your question about the blue piano, I play it often. I play it for my daughter. I've been sitting her on my lap, and we've been playing simple melodies. She mostly wants to eat it. But I'll sometimes stand her on it and she'll play with her feet, which she really likes. I have a couple books of like simple Broadway songs, simple pop songs, which I go to a lot because every time I try to play the complicated songs, there are a lot of mistakes happening. Again, I'm a quite mediocre pianist. So I've had this piano for a while, and in season 4 of Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, we wanted to do a reprise of this song called What'll It Be, which is the song the character Greg sang in season 1. And we were out of money at this point in the season. There was always a point in the middle of the season where were truly out of money, and we needed to have a piano, but we didn't have the money to rent a piano, even though this piano cost $80. Anyway, I said, this is ridiculous. Just come to my house and use my piano. Because it was apparently way cheaper to have the crew come to my house in a truck, pick up my piano, and bring it back to me than renting a piano. So this piano is the actual piano in the reprise of What'll It Be in season 4 that Skylar Astin plays. In exchange for using my piano, they said, well, we're gonna have to paint your piano black. It was a brown piano. And they said, we can repaint it any color you like. And I was like, well, I have like a blue rug in my piano room. Can you do a light blue? And they did. So this is a blue piano, courtesy of the amazing props and set decoration department in Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. Let's see. Oh, basketball court. Thank you. Seeing all that now. Life is like a hurricane. Yeah. Great. Basketball court. What's wrong with me? I sometimes think I have, mommy brain. But what I'm realizing, I think it's pandemic brain, because I'm not the only person who's suddenly at a loss for words. I'm realizing when I Zoom with other people, everyone else is forgetting. Yeah, I think it's Mary Elizabeth. It's mommy brain plus pandemic brain. Wow. Yeah, all our brains are mushy sieves. I agree. It's crazy. This is an insane time. What questions would I like to be asked? I was saying before everyone was on that I would do my own Q&A if there weren't questions. So I have here a question from myself. Is there a part of the book that you would change now post-pandemic? Well, I'm so glad you asked that, Self. There is, and actually it's addressed in the afterword. The afterword, because I could kind of sneak in an afterword at the last second. The afterword addresses everything I talked about with my daughter being born and Adam dying, and how the idea of normalcy, if I were writing the book now, it would affect the writing of the entire book, but also probably might have its own chapter. But I think in a lovely way, the book is a time capsule of everything before March 2020, because I finished off the first draft in March of 2020, and then I went to get induced, and then everything changed. So I don't know if I would change that. What else can we talk about? What else is in the news? I can give you a little tour of my office that might show you kind of how my brain works. Here are all the ideas. Here are all my ideas, potential ideas that I have. They're color coded. Yellow is movies. Orange is theoretically TV, but I ran out of yellow, so orange is a movie. Pink is live theater. And that's breast pump tubes. My house is under construction, so half of my house is not available to me right now. And so this is my office / breast pumping station / baby playroom. You might recognize that is a mini version of Rebecca Bunch's prized alligator, Ruth Gator Ginsburg. This is a mini version, was given as a parting gift to everyone by someone who worked on Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. What else can we see? Let us in on the movie ideas. Ooh, what can I talk about? Let's see. What do I want to actually spoil? Well, I'll tell you something that I'm going to pitch. I can tell you this because this is solely my idea. I'm about to pitch a limited series sketch show about the clitoris. And it's going to be called "And Introducing the Clitoris." So I am getting that pitch ready right now. And that is an exclusive here, folks. I haven't told anyone else that. So basically what I'll do is, and maybe I'll get your advice. Maybe I'll get everyone's advice. So the way you pitch a TV show is I'll pitch it to my agents. I'll see if they have any notes, and then I can partner with a production company, or I can just go pitch it to networks directly. But I think I'll try like Netflix and Amazon, FX first. See, I don't know, maybe HBO. We'll see if people are doing a sketch show. Continue to go around the office. I vote for you to write a musical about this election. I would if it weren't changing every fucking minute. You can't write anything about this election because by the time you write a thing, Trump has the ability to fly now. And you're like, oh, okay. Well, that point was moot. This is the original sketch of my Golden Globes dress by Christian Siriano. Beautiful, beautiful dress. These are the original sketches of Rebecca's outfit. Rebecca's outfits from the pilot Crazy Ex-Girlfriend by our lovely costume designer Melina Root. Here's my bookshelf that has my name. This is some collections of my character Barb from Trolls World Tour. You can buy it now on VOD or stream it. This is a gift that says My First Fire. It's a gag gift that someone gave to me before my baby was born. It's an empty box, nothing's in it. But it's fantastic. And yes, these are graphic novels. So we have an entire section for just comic books and graphic novels. It's my husband, my husband and I are our collective collection. Got Ex Machina, we got Why the Last Man. Big fans of Brian K. Vaughan in this house. Let's see. Here we have our kind of our bigger books that won't fit on other things. They're kind of coffee table books that aren't on a coffee table. We have here, these are all books about writing or by comedians. And then this is a photo of me with my grandfather at Dodger Stadium that my mom took. And that's the reflection of my screen on it. This is all plays and like theater, so it's like playbooks. This is something that I made in pottery class in 7th grade. This is a book on the Countess Elizabeth Bathory, who's one of the most prolific serial killers in the history of the world, and I would like to do a musical about her someday. That's on my to-do list. Graphic novels, and then here's all my like pregnancy books that I'm kind of keeping just for memorabilia next to my first fire. Okay, I'll take you over. You'll be excited to see this. Hold on. This is my this is my first award shelf. There's the Emmy, there's the Golden Globe, there's the Critics' Choice, and back there is the TCA award. We will be moving these downstairs because a child, this is literally like a stabbing, this is how you stab a child. So we'll be moving this out very quickly. Luckily, my daughter's only 6 months old, so she can't yet reach up there and grab the Emmy and stab herself through the head, but she will be able to soon. And believe me, I'm aware. If you could star in any musical or play, what would it be? Other than something I write, I would play Harold Hill in The Music Man. Anything else?
I think that maybe we can take a final question if someone has it, but I'm so distracted. I could hear you talk all day.
I feel like I was just like rambling, but thank you. It was a pleasure to have you all in my office. Oh, of course. Can you talk about your love of Ray Bradbury? So Ray Bradbury was my gateway into science, sci-fi, fantasy. Before his writing, I thought that it wasn't for me because I'd try to read sci-fi fantasy and be like, this is a little too clinical and unemotional for me. And we had the Martian Chronicles in my house because this is a separate weird fact. Ray Bradbury went and spoke at the local, I think it was my grandfather's Rotary Club. And Ray Bradbury, like my mother, didn't drive. And my grandfather drove him home. And they corresponded a couple of times after that. And so my grandpa would talk about, like, I met Ray Bradbury. And so we had some Ray Bradbury books in the house because of that. So I read the Martian Chronicles when I was 14, and my mind was blown. And I continued to Fahrenheit 451, we read in school. And then I read The Illustrated Man. And then in college, I was back home for my summer break, and I reread the Martian Chronicles and continued to marvel at the mix of high concepts and emotion. Basically, the high concepts being a platform to talk about humanity. And I had just gone through a breakup with a guy who was very, very mathematical and clinical and cold and unemotional. And I thought, oh, Ray Bradbury is the perfect man. And that's what inspired writing the song, Fuck Me, Ray Bradbury. But I still love Ray Bradbury, and I love his books. And looks like Hannah Finney has entered the waiting room for this meeting. Okay, let her in.
Thank you so much. That was phenomenal. I laughed until I cried. I think most of us did.
Well, the book comes out November 17th. I worked really hard on it. Writing a book is really hard. And it was really fun.
Good. I'm glad. Please, everyone, check out the book. And again, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.